All right, so the last thing that I do want to show you guys for now is how the exponents and the radicals actually relate to one another, because they actually do mean something with one another. So the question I asked is, what do the fractions mean in exponents? So we've been talking about exponent rules, and we've been saying, oh, well, you can follow the same rules with the fractions. Well, what do those fractions mean? So right here is just kind of our general fraction, x, because that's anything, to the m over n, all right? And what I want you to realize is that the numerator is our power. Okay, so that's, you know, it's like if it were squared, or if it were to the third power, or the fourth power, or whatever the power is. But the denominator is actually our root, or our index that we've been using, okay? So the way that we can actually rewrite this is instead of looking at it as just one big exponent, we actually can rewrite it as a root and then a power. So the power goes on the outside, just like normal. So whatever we get in here, we actually take it to that power. And then in here, when you look at the denominator, that tells you what root to do. So x is still here, and the root we would have is what we would put right there. So typically, we work the root out first, because it's always better to get the number smaller. And then whatever number we get, we then take it to that power in our numerator right here. Okay? And so we are going to practice what I'm saying right here with some numbers, but this is the rule that you want to keep in mind. All right, so here we actually have some numbers. So which one is the power? Well, the power is the 5. And which one is the root? Well, the root is the 4. So if you wanted to rewrite that to understand it a little bit better, or to take it into a radical type form, this actually would rewrite as the 4th root, because that's what we want to work out first. That makes it smaller. And then to the 5th power. Okay? So the root goes in here, that's the denominator. The power goes out there, that's the numerator. All right, so then, and this really doesn't take us very far. That's as far as we can go. So that's really all it is with variables. But it's really helpful when we actually have numbers, where we actually have numbers that we can evaluate. So the first thing we want to recognize is the power is here, and the root is there. So the first thing we want to evaluate is the root, because it will make it smaller. So it's the square root, there's an automatic 2, of 4, because that's the root. And then whatever we get here, we take it to the 3rd power. So the root is here, and the power is there. So then you could actually evaluate this. The square root of 4, and you don't even need that. You guys know that the square root of 4 is the number 2. So then, now that you've figured out that number and made it smaller, now you can take it to the power. 2 to the 3rd power is the number 8. So you could actually evaluate this and get an actual number that makes it nicer than that fraction of those exponents. So we do the same thing here. The root is a 5th root of 32. Okay? And then the power is, we would take that to the 3rd power. And actually, I think I'm going to change that just because I did it in my head, and it's going to be a little repetitive. So let's say to the 4th power instead. Okay? So the 5th root of 32. Well, you could use your calculator, or just how many of the same thing do you multiply 5 times? Because I use roots all the time, that is the number 2. Okay, 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. And then this 2 is taken to the 4th power, so that simplifies all the way down to 16. 2 to the 4th, 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, that gives us 16. All right, and then here it just takes us a step further. We know that a negative means to flip to the denominator. So really, this is 16 to the 3 over 2. That's why we practiced our rules last week. Then you just take it in the root and in the power form. So what kind of root is it? It is a square root of 16 because of the 2. Then we will cube it. All right, so we know that the square root of 16 is the number 4. Then 4 to the third, you could say 4 times 4, that's 16. 16 times 4, put it into your calculator and you would get a 64. So the only difference with this one is that I threw in a negative to remind you that negatives, remember, will flip. So instead of the answer being in the numerator, it's just 1 over that number instead. All right? So that is the other thing we want to talk about. The numerator of the fraction is our power. The denominator is our root, or the index of our root. And we usually work out the root first, because that'll make the number smaller, as long as you can actually root it. And then we take it to the power, because it's easier to take a smaller number to a power. All right?